After months of preparation, the International Cello Festival of Canada officially begins tomorrow in the city of Winnipeg. Some of the best cellists in the world have descended on the River City to showcase their art in unique collaborations and solo performances. That includes the American cellist Inbal Segev, who will be performing in a range of concerts throughout the festival, working with ensembles like the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra and Dead of Winter, along with some solo showcases. Inbal joins us in the Classic 107 studios to tell us more. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, as you start to see all of these different cellists, all these different artists descending here on Winnipeg, what are your first impressions of what a gathering of all of these world-renowned performers on the cello? What are your impressions of what this gathering will be like?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised to meet over breakfast one of the cellists that came from Vienna, and he is also a composer like myself. And I think more and more of us are composing, which makes me very interested to hear what they write. I think the styles that people bring in are very diverse. And yet we all play Bach and we play Beethoven and we play Haydn. And so I'm super psyched for this.
So I want to get into all of that coming up in the next little bit here to talk about your own compositions, of course. But you mentioned those sort of stalwart pieces, the things that sustain the cello repertoire and have for so many centuries. That includes a performance of all of the Beethoven cello sonatas, which you will be participating in. And maybe that's a good place to start because we're talking about some of that stalwart repertoire. What does a concert featuring all of Beethoven's cello sonatas mean to you to hear them all in the same event?
Well, first of all, I wish I could hear all of them because I think I'm playing in the second half.
Yeah.
I think it will give the audience a really special way to see and hear Beethoven because, as I said, everybody is playing it differently, whether we live and were educated in Europe or in the United States or in Israel, like myself. So that is a really, really interesting way to see how those composers unify us, and yet we each have our slightly different language.
Sure. So then so you grew up in Israel, and that's where you first began your cello studies before coming over to America at the behest of one Isaac Stern.
Yes.
That experience growing up with repertoire like this, the sort of the canon repertoire like the Beethoven cello sonatas, what was that like when you were beginning your education in Israel?
Well, I remember I had a recording of Paul Tortelier, the great French cellist, which I would listen to on repeat. My mom is a pianist, so we would play that. The third sonata quite a bit. And then when I came to the States, I studied with Bernard Greenhouse. And we would work. I mean, if you saw my score, there's so many notes and scribbles and thoughts. We would really work on each note on the fourth, some of the fifth sonata. So yeah, these have kind of accompanied me my whole life.
Okay. In addition to those sort of the classic pieces from the early Romantic like Beethoven, you're also rather well known for your work in Baroque repertoire as well. You'll be sharing music by C.P.E. Bach, for example, during the duration of this festival. How did that relationship with that era of cello music begin for you? And what do you think it says to continue to share that music here in the 21st century?
I also played Bach my whole life. CPE is his son, which was interestingly more famous than his father back in the day. And it's a gorgeous concerto that is a little underplayed, actually. I recorded it in Menlo a couple of summers ago. And it's just a really beautiful, beautiful piece. Our relationship with Bach never ends because, in my opinion and many others, he's the greatest composer that ever lived, and there's always something to discover. And CPE is, different. It's lighter, in some ways, but that second movement from the concerto is just so gorgeous.
So what are you still discovering about the cello when you continue to revisit works by by either J.S. Bach or C.P.E. Bach or Beethoven, which you've played however many times over the course of your career. What are you still discovering about the cello and what it can do at this point in your career?
For me, there's the interplay between like the old way of playing with a Baroque bow and gut strings, and making this idiomatically written music works better, perhaps, for the modern cello. What can we sort of take out from that way? The new instruments that we have to improve upon what was, and is it an improvement? So there's always a thought there. What are we losing by using a modern instrument, and what are we gaining?
Okay, that's really interesting to consider the give and take relationship of this repertoire and how it is represented in 2025. That addition and subtraction also comes to play in the music that you now write, in addition to what you play. And I want to get to the relationship between those two things in just a second. But maybe you can take us back to the genesis of this urge to write your own music, which didn't happen all that long ago, to my understanding.
Yes, I sort of discovered that I'm really passionate about writing music during the pandemic, where we all sat at home and we didn't have, concerts. And so I started by writing a cello quartet because I know the cello, and then we recorded it. And later, I wrote many other works. I'm going to record my clarinet, cello, piano trio soon. I just wrote a cello concerto that's going to be premiered in San Francisco. So it gives me a different venue and a way to grow, because I think after playing the cello for so many years, 45 years, I needed something to help me go forward, to enrich my life.
How did your experience performing as a soloist all of these years, the music of the Beethoven sonatas, of C.P.E. Bach, of J.S. Bach, how did those performances shape your own compositions? In other words, maybe another way to look at it is, what were you hearing or not hearing in the music that you were sharing as a soloist that you wanted to capture in your own writing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I try to, on the one hand, you want to bring something new to the table. I mean, nobody needs another Beethoven or another Bach. But on the other hand, obviously, this is very much in my DNA and all our DNA. So I love music that is tonal, but I do find other ways to bring it into the future by using electronics sometimes in my writing. I use Middle Eastern. My cello concerto is very Israeli, so I wanted to bring that part of me to the work. And I think, of course, as I said, the classical repertoire is very much ingrained in me, so it's there.
But then there's this other element of that reciprocity between you now writing music after having performed for so many years. You're going to be performing over the next few days here at the International Cello Festival of Canada. As you return to pieces like the Beethoven Cello Sonata and to C.P.E. Bach, after having been a composer now for some years, how does your perspective on those pieces change?
Yeah, and that's also a great question, because I definitely feel, as I perform again those works and revisit that, when I compose, there are always changes, and you go with what sounds best and what works best, and so. And also you make mistakes in the score. There's little mistakes. When we study a score by Beethoven, we treat it as a Bible, as something that is should not be changed and is absolutely last word. And it's a good starting point, but I think we also realize that when you write, you realize that people are human, and they make mistakes, and they can change things if they don't work.
So there's a lot that is obviously written about you and the way that you perform and write over the years. And I was really struck by one quote in particular, that you are a cellist with something to say. And as you perform, as you compose, you're acknowledging all of those different elements of humanity that you talked about. That there's this, on the one hand, this formidable and not unapproachable, but it's a tall task to perform a Beethoven cello sonata as an example with one's own voice. On the other hand, you have the blank canvas in front of you with writing music that connects to your life, to your training, to your upbringing in Israel. What do you hope to be able to share about your life, your perspective on music, and by extension, the way that you see the world?
Well, that's a big question.
As I was just going to say, I was going to say, I'm throwing a lot at you there.
I think that honesty is very important to me, and I think the audience is very sensitive to when a performer is honest, when a performer is too perhaps concerned with academics or technicalities. So hopefully you're free of those when you come to stage with enough preparation. I know for myself, when I recorded the Bach suites, and you can see there's a documentary online.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't record it right away. I tried to record it and it didn't work for me. And then I had to scrap that, and after quite a few months come back to the studio and do it again because I was thinking too much. So it's good to think, but not too much.
All right. So, and you've been imparting that wisdom as well into the next generation of cellists that are coming along as well. And of course, the International Cello Festival of Canada has a strong component for that generation of cellists that will be taking up that mantle as well. And that education is something that you have been sharing about quite passionately for a number of years with your chat's musings,
Yes.
which people can find on YouTube. And we'll link to that later at our website and app as well. What do you hope that younger generation of violinists, good grief, of cellists takes away from this experience of being in a gathering of such luminary cellists such as yourself?
Well, I'm hoping for them to be inspired just like myself, and to also see that there's so many ways to do what we do. There isn't just one way, and I think that we all have to find what's the right way for us.
Sure. You talk about the inspiration then for yourself. What do you hope to take away from your experience here in Winnipeg as you continue to travel around the world sharing your own performances and compositions?
I also hope to be inspired to hear as many different cellists as I can. Really looking forward to some of the newer stuff, but also to the final concert. Alban is playing the Don Quixote. I'm looking forward to hearing the cellist playing Bach. And of course to my own concerts with the choir. This is such a special combination to have a cello play with a choir.
Well, and so many cellists combining to perform alongside choirs like Dead of Winter and with the wonderful ensembles that make up this city's cultural tapestry. We'll have more information about all of this up at our website in just a little bit, classic107.com, and on the Classic 107 app. Inbal Segev, it's such an honor to have you here with us in our Classic 107 studios. We're so grateful for the time, and all the best for this week's performances.
Thank you so much for having me.